Hey, thank you everyone for joining me today. Today, we're going to be doing a collateral review of a note. And now this is not going to be the entire due diligence process. This is just some of the insights of, uh, the note itself. So the note and mortgage, I should say. So if you have questions, feel free to comment in the chat at any point in time, or put it in the Q&A, and be happy to answer any questions that people have. First, a little bit about me. As many of you know, I am the co-host along with Gil Greenberg of the Good Deeds Note Investing podcast. I'm currently managing a portfolio of over 200 active notes and continuing to grow. We are still at this point in time in buying mode. During this time, looking for distressed sellers of assets who are looking for liquidity at this point in time. A little bit of background about me. Got a civil engineering degree and wrapping up a master's in finance. And I work full time in real estate for a Washington, D.C. based developer. So that's my full time gig where I oversee their development, construction, CapEx projects that they need done and so forth, so on, and any new projects that we've got going on. So that's kind of a little bit background about what I do in my free time besides notes and, with my family and so forth. One thing probably most of you probably don't know about me, or, don't know, is don't ever join the Polar Bear Club. It's really not that fun. And what the Polar Bear Club is on New Year's Day, you jump in the ocean somewhere. And for me, it was in Newport, Rhode Island back in probably like 1999. So not recommended by any way, shape, or form. That's what happens when you're young and dumb, I guess. And my overall goal with this presentation, and pretty much, the podcast itself, is trying to educate a lot of people in the note space from making costly mistakes. And we try and do that, basically at no cost to everybody. There's a lot of, trainings out there where people are charging for everything left and right and so forth. We try and provide everything to everyone, basically free, and share our experiences and our stories. And I think the best experiences and stories come with, buying and having an active portfolio. So lastly, just a few upcoming events tomorrow afternoon. Going to do a collateral review of a contract for deed, as it is very different than a note. And then on Friday, I'm going to talk about partials and how they can be more profitable than non-performing loans. So that's coming up Friday afternoon, and expect next week. Putting together some shows for next week as well, for these lunch and learn is what I'll call them. Different times during the day. Typically, like right now, is when I take my lunch break. It's 12:30 here on the East Coast. And if there's other topics, feel free to put them in the Facebook group, Notes and Bolts Facebook group. If you want certain topics, I've already put a poll up where we've got a good amount of feedback from people already. So let's roll into the collateral review. First, I just want to explain to people, the two major components that people sometimes, use as thinking they're the same, but they're absolutely not. And the first, these are the note and the mortgage or deed of trust. And the note is really the promise that you're going to pay a borrower. The borrower is going to pay somebody. You have a note for a loan. You can have a note for many different things. So you can basically, a note is a loan. And when it's sold, it's either, transferred by an allonge, or the note is stamped endorsed to somebody. So those are kind of ways the note gets transferred, and the note and all the allonges are never recorded. So it's something just to remember, and it's going to come up later on, when you have somebody review the collateral, because this is not a recorded document. Now, the mortgage on the other side, other half, or deed of trust, depending on the state you're in, I like to call that the ball and chain. That connects the property and the note together, and acts as the collateral. So when those get transferred or sold, those are assigned. So that right, basically, to use that collateral gets assigned. and those are recorded. So those get recorded along with the actual mortgage or deed of trust. And that's when you order a title report, what's really you're looking at the chain on. But you also got to make sure when you're looking at these, you're looking at both chains coming down the pipeline. So does that make sense to everyone? Just want to make sure, people understand that, because there is, there is a difference, a big difference with each one. And you really need both components. Now, we'll talk later about lost note affidavits and things like that. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is, okay, you know what a mortgage is, you know what a note is. Now, you hear the phrase get tossed around, I'm getting a collateral package and I'm getting a soft package, which is an emailed version of the documents. And this is what you get after you bid on an asset and get it under agreement. They'll send you what is called the collateral. And I put together a list of some of the common things that are included within a collateral package, and it really can vary depending on the number of items that are in there, because some collateral files are strictly just these documents. Others have every demand letter, so forth. And I'll show you an example in a second of, sometimes how deep these files can get. But typically what is going to be in there is the note itself, the mortgage and deed of trust, the assignments, which are the assignments of the mortgage or deed of trust, what the path to where whoever owns it now. And then the allonges, which sometimes there may not be allonges if the note is endorsed blank, and we'll talk about that later. Title policy. So you want to see if there is a title policy on the loan. If it was generated by a major institution, typically there would be title insurance on it. But sometimes there isn't, and it is not the end of the world if there is no title policy. Sometimes you'll see the borrower application package when they originally applied, which is, the 1003 form, which is a mortgage application. Sometimes that could be in there. There'll be modifications, forbearance, or any other agreements. These are important too to look at, because when you're reviewing, the tape, sometimes you'll look at the note and you got to make sure that somewhere it matches, because you may have a note that was at $800 a month and then the tape says 300. Make sure you're not thinking it's 800, because there's probably a forbearance or modification in there. If there isn't and the tape doesn't show that information, you definitely want to ask that question. And sometimes you'll get the credit report and the appraisal. So if you ever bought a house, all that paperwork you fill out, everything you get at the closing table, that's kind of what's sometimes in these packages. And, as an example, on my screen right now, here's nope, wrong one. Give me 1 second. I'll open up a collateral package. Give me 1 second. I may have to open up later, because I thought I linked it, but I did not. So, and I didn't link it. So people ask, but it included demand letters. It included, every correspondence. Sometimes that is in there, and it just makes these things super, super thick. So something that to look out for. But sometimes they're very thin. They can vary in thicknesses, where I've got some collateral packages that are 3 inches thick and some that are a 1/2 inch thick. So that's kind of the collateral package, what you get. And I start looking through that early on before I order an O&E report. And it's important to do that because there's a few things that you'll want to confirm as part of it is, you can check online. Again, I use DataTree to see who the current owner of the property is and make sure that it matches whoever is with the note. And if it doesn't, that's a red flag. And sometimes you may find out that properties may have sold at tax sale or something may have happened and save you that expense from ordering the O&E report that's out there. So that's one thing that, we'll talk about a little again later on about the collateral. Now, a lot of times what people do is once they get the collateral package, they will also order a title report. And a lot of people use Pro Title. You can use a nationwide title company. You can use pretty much anybody that can provide this information. Now, a lot of the common questions that get asked on a title report is, what do I order, a single or two owner report? Um, and I will tell you, order a two owner report, which goes back pretty much to history. So you can see things that may have occurred or issues. On a single owner report, they may not show up. And I have had that in the past, and that's a lesson learned. When you order, it's an extra $45 or whatever it is, you want to order a 2.0. Who do I order it from? Again, you can order it from Pro Title, or there's nationwide title companies as well that you can order these from. Dickie Baldwin, I know at Baldwin Advisory Group, also can get title reports for you. So, take your pick. Just make sure you read the contracts with each one, because some of them may not guarantee the information on there, which could be problematic if there is an issue down the line. And the other question is, a lot of people will send this information to an attorney to review. And, what do you send the attorney for review? And we're going to talk about that later on, because that's an in-depth process that I want to really talk to people about, because I see people complain about attorneys a lot. And in this instance, I've seen a lot of complaints about this, and the challenge is people aren't sending them the proper information. For example, you send a title report that shows, the borrower's name and, basically just a pro title report. And, the information you have could be a note on, for example, a different property, whereas it was 200, Main Street, but it was a typo on the original documents, and the APN number was really for 220. And I've had that happen before. And then you order it, everything looks good, and then you realize, oh, it's not even the borrower. You didn't, nothing got checked. And the attorney says, yes, everything's clean. And then later on, you go to foreclose, and then realize this came up, and it can lead some problems down the line. So, with that, again, my whole focus today was really, I wanted to roll into some case studies for people, to kind of show people some of the things, or what I do when I get the information, or I send it out to have it done. So one I'm going to pop up right now, call this Duncan. And when I get the collateral file, basically kind of you jot down the chain, okay? And when I talk, people ask, what is the chain? So from this chain, it was originated through, a MERS loan over to Granite. Then Granite gave it to Alliance to SC, and then SC to Kirkland. So everything matches, because at each tail, the predecessor and successor of each one lines up. And then on the allonges, they did issue allonges on this one, which was basically followed that same precedent. So this is a nice clean one. And for those that can see my screen right now, you can see I keep everything filed, and this is actually Orion does this. They list all the allonges and the assignments, and if you log in, you can actually see that chain as well. So it's very easy when you look at it this way to see if there's any hiccups or any breaks in that chain, because breaks in that chain can be problematic and cause you to need to get some type of gap assignment, which, depending on who the seller is, if they're still around, could be problematic from that standpoint. So something to be cognizant of. But this one, like I said, was very, pretty cut and dry. And let me just see if I have the O&E report open. Okay, so here's the O&E. And for people who haven't seen an O&E report, I'll just spend a minute to go through it. So here you've got the property ownership, the address, the APN, the borrower's name. And this one, this was an early one where I only did current owner. I should have done a to owner. Fortunately, it didn't cost me on this one. And then, when it was assigned, vesting is when one ownership to the next. And then a big thing to look at here is open mortgages. And you want to see the mortgage A you're buying is on there. And several things you want to look at it for is, one, are you in first position? Because I've seen ones where you're not in first position. And secondly, is there a second on the property? And the reason why it's important to look for seconds or other types is if you ever do a deed in lieu and take that property back, you can't. Or, well, let me phrase that. You can, but you basically would have to pay off that other loan. So you could be careful. And again, here is that chain that we talked about that I had, mapped, that had gone through. So you can kind of see that process that I had talked about. And then the other thing you'll see on here is a bunch of liens against the borrower, and understanding which ones stick and don't is something you definitely want to talk to your attorney about. They'll show taxes as well on here, tax assessed value. And then what they'll do is they provide all the documentation. Go through all the documents in your title reports. And the reason why is sometimes there might be something stuck in there that you did not pick, that is not picked up on the cover page. I've had some where there was an extra $10,000. So hold on one second. No, sorry about that. Sorry, somebody just walked in and completely threw me for days. There was a $10,000 lien on the property that was not showing up on the cover page. What was actually in there. So this, I wanted to show this. This is clean. So this is nice and pretty. This is a clean one. So this was one I wanted to show. Next one I want to show is one not so clean. So this is one that was acquired and went through everything on when I got the original information. Okay, I had Bank of America. So when I got the collateral package, and this one we're just going to call Flint. So this is my Flint asset. So I get the collateral package. Everything looked good because I had Bank of America, had the note. They assigned it to Nation Star, who assigned it to Strategic, and that's who I was buying it from. So the note was there, the assignments were there, everything was in good condition. So it looked good from a collateral perspective. But then when I ordered the title, and again, I only did a current owner here. Shame on me. And you can see this was back in 2017, so it was over 3 years ago. When you scroll through, there's this note down here, and it's really could be pretty easily missed. It says, note deeds recorded out of order. What that means is Home Financial basically recorded the deed to the borrower before they recorded the deed into their entity. So it got recorded backwards. That's a problem because they didn't have the authority to assign it to the borrower or sell it to the borrower until their deed was recorded. So they recorded the same date, but they were out of order. Fortunately, on this one, there was a title insurance policy, but we had to do some digging because it wasn't in the file. So here's a little secret I'm going to show people on how to find a title insurance policy. So when I went and looked at the mortgage again, okay, the first thing is typically on the first page of the mortgage, you'll see who to return to after recording. Typically, that's a title company. And, if it is, then typically that's who would have gotten the title policy. So that's the first place you can look. But on the flip side, they do so many closings, sometimes it's difficult. And this was by Bank of America. So basically, good luck getting them. And this was from 2007. So you can only imagine, needle and haystack on this thing. But I noticed this number, and 23788 written several places on the mortgage. And I was curious what that was. And when I was talking to a title company, their comment was on the mortgage, they typically write the title policy number on the mortgage. And when I scroll through this, there is a boom, on the exhibit A on the corner, there was a file number, which had that 3788 number on it. So when I reached out to the title company, I said, would you have any number? And I just basically said, hey, I've got this number that doesn't match the instrument number. Lo and behold, that was the title policy. So this one, what they had to do is they had to fix the title policy, which was, because they were recorded out of order. And this was a property that was in foreclosure. So, that was something that did take time, but it did get resolved. And another way to kind of tell if there is a title policy on some type of loan is a type of deed. If it's a warranty deed, 99.9% of the time, there is a title policy on there. And if there isn't, shame on the seller, because they are warranting it against defects. And if there's something wrong, someone could go after them. That's why you have title insurance. On quitclaim deeds, you're pretty much never going to see a title insurance. And again, it's not important, it's not bad, but it's something that you do want to get reviewed. And you could even have a title company add, potentially something later on down the line. So that's another key component there, where I had to deal with the, the title insurance on that one. And like I said, when I got the collateral, everything looked good. But I didn't look at, go through the history to see the deeds. So that's one area where something could go awry, is when it's recorded on the public record side of things. Okay. The next example I'm going to show you is a property in Indianapolis. And this one basically when I got the collateral package, I noticed it went from MERS to US Bank, and then from Bank of America, Nation Star. So, okay, wait a second, time out, everybody. It was not in order. And then later on, when you looked at it, there was a corrective assignment that basically what happened was US Bank or Bank of America one of them forgot to record it. So they had to do a correction. And what the correction does is kind of sneaks it back in to the middle space where, okay, now we got corrective where US Bank did give it to BOA, Bank of America, and then Bank of America to Nation Star and down the line. Now, one thing I wanted to mention earlier too, on the allonges, because I get this question asked a lot as well. And, sometimes there's allonges and sometimes there's not. And the best way, thing to understand with that is to check the note. And if the note is endorsed to blank, then typically allonges are not issued. So think of it another way. If somebody gave you a signed blank check, that's pretty much the note. Whoever is in possession of it, can do what they want. Think of a Powerball ticket. If you got a Powerball ticket and on the back it's not signed by who owns it, then if I lose it, whoever has that basically has possession of that note. Now, it might not be backed by anything if the assignment chain isn't correct, but some people can get a little razzled because there is no a launch. And in this one, the note was actually endorsed to Nation Star, endorsed it because that was, I think, their policy. Then they ended up issuing the launch. So something for people sometimes I think get confused. It's like, oh, I'm missing this or that. Check on the note as well. So that's kind of, a lesson learned. And the last case study I just want to show you before I go through some steps and some other things to talk about is this one's an interesting one. So this is, and I left a lot of stuff out because this one's actually still pending court case. I have the allonge and the assignments, and I didn't put the assignment because there's just too much information on there to try and white out. But the assignment was basically the same, where this entity assigned it to another entity. The chain was clean as a whistle, so I thought, okay? But what I didn't know at the time, and this was a lesson learned for me, and this is the stuff that honestly, I don't know anybody who teaches you this. So this is kind of a, basically, oops, happens and you learn. The title by this individual is attorney in fact. So if there's an attorney in fact, there also needs to be a recorded power of attorney. Now, this one even goes a little deeper because I'm like, oh, yeah, I've got this power of attorney. And, I just popped it up on the screen and I've got this. But there are two issues with it. One is it wasn't recorded in that county. Secondly, is the allonge and assignment were dated in 2013. This only went through 2011. So this was something that I will tell you I missed. The original attorney missed. The title company missed, or whoever I ordered the O&E report. All of them missed it, and I don't know any. Let me rephrase that. If you use a true title company and order a title report to try and get warrant, basically, if you're having somebody review it as if you want to get a title policy on it, they would have picked this up. Now, certain ones may still, warrant over it and so forth. And that's the other thing too. Title companies are very weird. Some are much less loose restrictions than others. But from a foreclosure perspective, the other attorney picked this up and was like, oh, time out. You don't have a proper assignment because this person wasn't authorized to sign. So technically, people three before you technically still own this because they never properly assigned it. Now, at the end of the day, it's really a stall tactic because I can reach out and get this information. But it was something that they used again to try and stall as much as possible. So does that make sense for people out there? So one thing to look at is who's also signing these things. Just because there's a signature, you want to make sure, it's somebody, authorized. And sometimes some people ask actually for, when you sell an REO, I get asked this all the time. Show me your articles of incorporation, that you're in good standing, as well as your operating agreement. So it shows that I'm authorized to sign. I get asked that pretty much on every property that I take back and sell. So I wanted to show this one because this one, and I'm going to show this one on contract for deed one as well, because this is kind of that stuff that nobody, ever sees coming and stuff. But if you use a power of attorney, you want to make sure who is signing. If you use a company like KDK or Metasource or somebody like that, make sure you have a copy of your agreement where they have the authority or power of attorney to sign for you on this information as well. Okay. So those were some case studies I wanted to go through. So now I kind of want to talk about some of the steps to follow or things that you should be doing when reviewing the this information. So first thing is when you get a note under agreement, you'll receive that soft collateral. Again, that's the emailed version. And like I talked about earlier, and I was going to go through this at the beginning, and I decided let me do it at the end because I want to show people. I think it gives a better understanding why you want to follow this after you see some of these examples. You want to break out and write down the chain. And it's also good just to understand. Okay, it went from this to that, and before I order an O&E report, that's typically a lot of things I'll do, and I'll even reach out to the seller before I order it and say, hey, do you have this or whatnot? Information. Now, some people do get lost on, okay, well, we don't have the original of the assignment, but if it's recorded, then you should be fine. You don't need, if the original was lost after it was recorded for assignment or mortgage, shouldn't be the end of the world. Next thing you want to do is go online, confirm the current owner is listed on the property. So that's kind of a very generic and basic thing you want to follow, is to make sure that that is taken care of. Because it could have sold at tax sale, and sometimes when you're reviewing these assets, especially some of these low dollar ones, which I buy a lot of them, I'll double check to make sure what is on there and what wasn't, that it's still a current owner. Next, you want to confirm the latest assignment launch chain ends with the current seller. This is how you know if it's a broker. If it shows the last one as I'll just say Portfolio Associates, or Harbor or Window Rock, whoever it may be, add a note, and you're buying this from me as an example, you'll be like, wait a second, are you brokering this, or do you actually own this? Because I don't see the assignment to you that says you own it. Now, when you pull an O&E report, sometimes it might not show the latest, because it's still possibly in process being recorded, whatnot, because recordings can take a long period of time. But you'll want to confirm whoever you're having that from, basically, that the assignment and the allonge ends with them. And then once you do that, you order the 2 owner title report from your title company, whether, again, it's a nationwide one, Pro Title, Baldwin Advisor Group, whoever it is, from that standpoint. And then when you get the title report, make sure or before you order, make sure the data matches. Like I talked about earlier, I had a property in Texas where the mortgage, every document had the wrong property address on it. And again, this was early on in my career, and I just took it, and before I reviewed any collateral and even the tape, everything was wrong. I just said, okay, order me a title report for this parcel. And then I saw that it came back and it was a different owner, and the seller's like, that's impossible, the person just paid literally 2 months ago. It could, and this says it was transferred 6 years ago. Lo and behold, like I said, everything said 200 Main Street on it, and the actual property was 220 Main Street. So one of the things, lessons learned is, when I send information to Pro Title, I include the borrower name, the address, the APN number, the type of report I want to order, and who I'm also acquiring this from, and what am I doing? Am I buying the property? Am I buying the note? I let them know all that information. So if they pull it up and say, hey, your APN number doesn't match your address, they'll typically red flag that and ask. So it's important to send that to, whoever you're ordering your report from. One thing is, once you get all this data, a lot of people have an attorney review it. And if you're going to have an attorney review, which I highly recommend, especially if you're just starting out, make sure you list, okay, who the borrower is, also who you're acquiring it from. And when you send him the information, send him the O&E report, but also send him the note and the allonges as well. Because, again, a reminder, let's step back. The note and the allonges are not recorded. So if you just send them the Pro Title report, they can come back and say, oh, yeah, that's clean. That first one I showed you where everything looked clean. Say I didn't have the note or anything, or say, or, was missing information, depending on the state, you might, you could be, like in, I think Maine doesn't allow for lost note affidavits. You can be out of luck. So you got to make sure you send them that. The other thing is when you send it to them, don't send them the 300-page PDF that you got either, because guess what? You know, they're not probably going to go through everything, and they're probably going to miss it. So reminder, it's up to you to break out the important things you find important and send it to them. If there's questions that you have, put the questions in there as well. I've had many loans that I've sent to attorneys and said, hey, here's the status of this one, whether it be when their last pay date was, whether it was a question with the assignment, or I didn't understand something. Put those questions down in your email when you send this to them. Just don't send them an email saying, oh, I want a review of this. Because then the question is, review what? Okay, I can review. And basically, okay, yeah, it looks like everything looks good. But if they don't know who you're buying it from, or who the borrower is supposed to be, or which loan you're actually buying, what if there's, uh, 3 notes on the property and you're a seconds investor? You send it to the attorney. He may think you're, are you the first? Are you the second? Who are you? So, that's important that you have to explain that to the attorney. The more information you can provide to them, the better off you absolutely will be in regards to making sure that you get a proper review. So, some lessons learned that I've had through this. Again, property address versus the parcel number. Always include the parcel number because it can bite you. It has cost me, cost me $100. Power of attorney, and making sure the power of attorneys are recorded. Seeing that, and that's basically caused a significant delay in legal because of this. Another is unrecorded assignments. I've had a bunch of assignments that let's see, does the term need the same state as property? I'll answer that question. I'll answer the questions at the end. But unrecorded assignments. Sometimes, if you're buying it again from, I'm just going to use Harbor because that's what popped in my head from earlier. If you're buying it from them, but you don't see it assigned to them, say, hey, what's going on with this? Or it's unrecorded in the file. Ask them if they're going to record it, prior, or if they're not, you can record it, but hey, they're going to give you the money back. Depends on, it's not a lot of money, but it's just, if you're buying 100 of them, none of them recorded, then that adds up. Out of order dates. So here's one that those deeds were recorded, different orders. Here's a little tidbit for people. If you are like converting a land contract and creating a note and mortgage, and you're kind of doing it, doing it yourself. A lot of times what people do is they'll be like, okay, once I get the the note and mortgage back, I'll sign the deed. Well, guess what? If you do that, and when you go to get it notarized, your mortgage deed of trust and note, or actually your mortgage deed of trust, which get recorded, is dated before the deed to that person. Can't be that way. The deed has to be in front of the mortgage. And a lot of these counties will also look at it and be like, no, this person can't sign a mortgage or deed of trust if it's after the date of the deed. Lesson learned. I had that the first go around when I did one of my first conversions. So when you create those documents, basically create the deed. Again, you're not recording it, you're just getting it executed. So when they sign their documents, because there is a date in the corners on these documents, you want to make sure that they're all pretty much, that the deed comes first. Another lesson learned, ordering one owner reports. With the one order, again, it doesn't go back. And there could have been, I've got an asset right now that's got a title issue from many moons ago, where the borrower passed away, and then the children sold it to somebody, but there's nowhere we can find any of the information that shows, okay, where was the will? What was the probate? There was no probate involved. So basically, there's you know, the chain has been broken. So now it's trying to go back and fix it. Would require quiet title. Again, it can be done, but it's going to cost $2,500. Um, you know, Fortunately for this one, at the end of the day, we were able to get information from one of the people who sold it because they still live nearby, and got that information that we needed, so we didn't have to go through that process. But again, this kind of showed up late in the game. For us, because at the time, again, I had only ordered one owner, because when I was taught early on, the person that taught me said, oh no, you only need single owner reports, only need single owner reports. Well, that's pretty much furthest from the truth. Another lesson learned: not thoroughly reviewing title report and collateral. Now, again, that little note at the bottom of that one that had it said deeds recorded out of order. It wasn't in bold, wasn't easy to see, could have easily been missed. A lot of times when you go through, check, because there could be information in the back of your report that isn't on the cover sheet. So just don't review the cover sheet. Please, please, please go through the entire report. Take the time. You should spend, going through this, at least 15 minutes, just free time, flipping through it, going through each page and so forth. And I use software called Bluebeam. So what's nice with me, with my program, is I can take, for example, let me just pop this title report up. You know, what I can do when I get collateral or other information, I can come to, this page and say this was page 10 to 12. I can just export these 3 pages, extract pages, and take like pages, I can say here, custom 10 to 12, and then save it as a file. So then this could be the, if it was assignment from BOA to NationStar. So that way, in this main file stays the same. I'm basically just slicing up the pieces to create that chain, which I find convenient. So if you have any, whether it's Adobe or something that can do that, versus having to print all these things out, sometimes you may just have to print it out if it gets too confusing. But typically, I just do everything remote, or online on a screen. Last item is foreclosure, bankruptcy, and taxes and other liens. You need to understand what is and isn't being checked. In Pennsylvania, is it the county and the school taxes? In Indiana, is it the water and sewer liens being checked as well? Did anybody check to see if there's an ongoing bankruptcy case? So if you get the loan application package in the file, check. There will be borrower information that you can go onto Pacer and search to see, have they filed bankruptcy and how many times. Now, some people may have a unique name, like, my name, Chris 70. If that was in Pacer, there's one other Chris 70 I know. So, if there ever was one, there wouldn't be 100 of them pop up. When you're dealing with John Williams in Indiana, and even in the Northern District of Indiana, there could be 400 cases. How do you know? Well, you can do searches by, you know, certain information, social security numbers, that allow you to do that search. If the 1003 or application or credit report is not in there, ask the seller, hey, can I have this information? I want to check for bankruptcy. So again, something that you'd want to kind of look at as part of this package to see what is, what is going on, because they may have filed a Chapter 7 and relinquished the property. And then, you go through a collateral review and everything looks good, but hey, they filed Chapter 7. So basically it's your house. Like I said, I talked about the taxes, important to understand. Those to see, how much is out there in other municipal liens. The last is foreclosure. And what's important about this is, in certain states, if a lender took action against a borrower 10 years ago to foreclose and never did anything with it, some states have statute of limitations that can kick in, and your note is not worth anything. it may be past the statute of limitations. I shouldn't say it's not worth anything. It might be that you don't have the right to collect, and could have other implications, which I'm not the attorney. You need to talk to the attorney on. But I believe I think it's Illinois, that is the case, possibly Ohio, but some of these judicial states do have statute of limitations if you go to seek a foreclosure and don't follow through with it. Now, if you issue a modification or something happens like that, usually that ends it and can restart it. But if it was just somebody hasn't been paying and it just was left in la la land, that could be problematic. So those are some of the things that you should check. And if you have, again, that credit report application, if you send it to an attorney, you can also ask them to check to see if there were any pending cases. One thing that just popped in my head that I will share with you that actually assisted in this was I had an asset that the collateral file was basically lost. And literally there was nothing. But I was able to gather enough information and find a former foreclosure case from 2011 that basically they worked out a modification at the time. The attorney had everything digitally, including a copy of the note, a copy of the the assignments, had title report done, everything. I was able to obtain a copy of that and basically recreate the file because a lost note affidavit is okay in this jurisdiction. So we had a copy of the note. We did get a lost note affidavit, and then it opened up the file to be clean where we could go after the foreclosure on it. From that instance. So sometimes all may not be lost, in that instance, but 99.9% of the time, if, people are like, oh, I don't have any collateral, I would tell people run. I mean, this was one instance where it was part of a large pool that was purchased, so it was just thrown in there. But if, you're missing pretty much the entire collateral file or there's nothing there, don't even, I recommend especially if you're a new investor, don't just walk because you're just taking on some big headaches. So that's what I wanted to cover today. Wanted to try and keep it under an hour. Went 50 minutes, 10 minutes for questions. Again, thank you for watching today. If you have more great information, make sure to check out the Good Deeds No Investing podcast, as well as on 70 Investments. I have a lot of freebies for people on there, as well as other investment opportunities for accredited investors with some of the funds that we've been running and been doing very well in over this time. So with that, I will take some questions for people. We got some coming up. Slides be available after a session. Yes. And this is on Facebook Live, but I can make them available. Does the attorney need to be in the same state as the property? The attorney should be licensed in the same state as the property. Now, there's two ways to look at it. Sometimes, like I'll use Metasource to do an initial collateral review to see if everything is in order. So that's one component. If there's things that are way out of whack, then it's definite attorney review. But for the most part, my attorney reviews now consist more of a quick phone call if everything is in line or in order. But, you want the attorney licensed in that state to answer your question. If there's a large chain of assignments and some of the early ones are recorded out of order, ideally we would reach out to the companies and get fresh assignments, get them recorded. But if those companies no longer exist or hard to find or reach, what can we do to correct the collateral? That's always a challenge. So there was, for example, a company stewardship fund who had a lot of notes in CFDs a decade ago, and they closed shop because they were running a Ponzi scheme out of Texas, and they were, shifting assets from one fund to the other and basically stealing money, and is what what they reported, what the authorities alleged, and they were convicted, and I think someone went to jail, and it had a receivership shut down, and basically it's almost impossible to get information. It's impossible to get any paperwork from them now. If that is missing, so the truth of the reality is if it's missing during due diligence, you put it on the seller. But let's be honest, stuff gets missed, and I've rushed things in the past and realized something was missing, and now it's like, okay, I got to go hunt this down and find it. So recommendations I have is, and this is one of the reasons why I enjoy using a KDK or a KC Wilson or a Metasource / Orion. It's a small business, and they typically have the connections to hunt these people down, to find them for this type of paperwork, or they may point you in the right direction. But it can be very problematic if the assignments are missing from trying to get a foreclosure or anything in those. What you possibly could recommend, and again, this is all through attorney, but what I've done in the past with um, clouded paperwork is, two things you could do. You could probably still do quiet title. So again, talk to an attorney, because what they do is turn around and basically show the chain, and basically they turn around and technically like sue that company, and then the company that bought it from them would say, yes, we bought it from them, and show proof, and you get that cleared up through quiet title. But it can be possibly difficult. But the other thing I've done is, I've done brand new mortgage and note, and on some stuff that had a lot of hair to it, and basically um, cancel the other one, and issue a new one. But again, you still at some point in time have to get it cleaned up, because of the cancellation or the payoff would still show that the assignment wasn't missing. So if you can't get it, talk to the attorney. I think your option is probably going to be quiet title, which people don't understand what quiet title is. It's a court action to clean up a title history, or title report is what that is. So, and they're more common than you want them to be. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. Any other questions out there for anybody? If not, and I'll be honest, I haven't checked the Facebook Live feed to see if there are questions on there, but I could answer those offline for anyone as well. So thank you for joining me today. And again, tomorrow we're going to go through CFDs, which again are very different from notes when you're reviewing collateral. And that's one of the major differences. So people either looking at CFDs or contemplating investing in CFDs, definitely recommend you catch it either on Facebook Live or the recording, or join us live. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Ooh.